Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I'm going to continue this little miniature series I've been doing about player behaviors that drive me nuts, little pet peeves, little hot buttons. And if you've been paying attention, I did this little miniature video about those, and DBJ, Dave Breon Jackson, said, hey, why don't you do one video on each one of these? And I said, sure, why not? And then I decided, well, why don't I do these and not just be negative, but just kind of put a positive spin on them and maybe just talk about my own experience with them on both sides of the fence, like actually having been the perpetrator. So talking, or speaking of things that drive me nuts, let's talk about griping about the system that you're playing. And I've certainly been guilty of this. I've certainly been that guy. And my own experience is that, like, I played old school D&D for a good long time. I stopped playing games. I, had real life going on. I returned to the hobby, and if I wanted to be a player rather than a game master, generally what was available to me in this particular area were games like D20 Pathfinder, that sort of game. And I found I didn't like them. There was a bunch of reasons I didn't like them. I'm not knocking the games. They're not bad games. They just weren't for me. But I found that, over time, I realized that, like, if I'm going to sign up for a game, then it's bad form to be griping about it. And why do we gripe about stuff like that? Sometimes it's just because it's unfamiliar. Sometimes because it's not producing the experience that you want. Maybe it's like outside my comfort zone. Maybe it's just like that's the only game available, but I really want it to be like the game that I really like. Maybe it's a new experience and it's designed to produce a different experience, but I really want this other experience. And so I'm going to gripe and complain about it because I've got some of my favorites. And so that's something that I always have to be really, really careful of, because it's very easy for me to be guilty of that because I have preferences and I have things that I really like. I guess like the kind of before I go on to the positive spin, the other thing too is like, I had to remind myself to be very good recently. If you've been paying attention and watching my channel, because you should be watching all my videos. I'm incredibly engaging. There were some months ago that I was convinced I was going to play in a Hackmaster 4th edition campaign. I had some local group people that were going to run that, and it fell apart. There was some things with the game master, had some work issues, and thank goodness. But I was all set. I was going to go ahead, but I had to remind myself that I could already tell, oh man, this is going to be way outside what I'm really going to like, but I wanted to experience it. So more of the positive spin on this is, for me, I've come more and more to the conclusion that, part of what is good for me to do as a gamer is to go out and experience some of these games that maybe I don't like. Maybe I can suss them out and say, I don't really think I'm going to like this one. And a lot of times I can just say I'll pass. But there's sometimes there's some games I know that I probably would not like long term, but I want to try them anyway, just to have experienced that style of play, that type of rules, at least once. So I don't I'm not end up being guilty of that contempt prior to investigation, because you and I can investigate games via actually reading them, and if you're becoming more and more experienced, it's easier to kind of suss out what is this really going to be like, talking to people who have actually done them, play those games. But there's a point where you really just have to get on that bike and actually ride it to really, grok how it is. So, sometimes the takeaway from that is that I know why I don't like it. Sometimes the benefit, at least in my experience so far, is that I come away with some of those games knowing why I like the games I do like more. It gives me better perspective on those. Having role played using a different experience, and like, okay, well I understand more why I like this other game or these other types of games. And sometimes I get surprised. Sometimes like it's the green eggs and ham thing, where it's like, I guess I do kind of like that. And that's always neat too. But at the very least, the idea that it gives you better perspective on why your perspectives are the way they are. And I think we can always continue to grow and change throughout our life and in many different areas, and in our gaming career as well. The other cool thing that I found is you can get these takeaways from these other games. Say it's a game that you figure out, this isn't really for me, but this mechanic, this way we played it, this kind of experience, I really like those. And sometimes there are things you can bring back to some of your other favorite games and use because they're not really going to break that game. I'm not talking about house ruling, but maybe sometimes if you're playing OSR type stuff, you can always house rule something. Always fit one of those widgets in there somewhere. But just like, more of the, hey, let's try this kind of experience. Let's try troop style play. Let's try something, that doesn't really break the game, or it's not something that messes with the system itself. Sometimes those takeaways are really cool, and sometimes the coolest thing is, I'm not about to go out and start designing games. I don't think. Yeah, probably not. Uh, but you can see it's obvious that like there's plenty of games out there. There's a preponderance of games that they're informed by all these other games, and they're the people that like said, I like this, 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 and this. Let me figure out how to put all these together in a cogent system. Where it's not a Frankenstein, but it's like, okay, I want this game to have all these kind of elements, and cherry pick the best. Yeah, I suspect like games like Ubiquity are kind of designed that way. So that's that's another positive for going out and experiencing those things. But at the end of the day, yeah, I don't like playing with a guy that's bitching and whining and griping about the system and why he doesn't like it. I don't like this mechanic. How come it isn't like this? This is stupid. And I'm very aware that I can be that guy if I'm not careful. Sometimes it's that case of you spot it, you got it. Sometimes the shortcomings you have are the easiest ones for you to spot in other people. I know that's true of myself a lot. So, yeah, griping about the system that you're playing, not a great thing. However, it always pays, or pays dividends to play something and be aware of what you don't like and why you don't like it. If you're like me though, you don't always have to open your big fat mouth though. Take it easy.